Many years ago, in Living Word Assembly, Sunday mornings had a predictable rhythm. The plastic chairs were wiped with old Ankara cloths. The keyboard always shouted louder than the choir, and the generator would protest before agreeing to work, as if it also needed encouragement. Children chased one another in the corridor, while their mothers shouted threats that nobody intended to enforce. Back then, the church was simple. Nothing dramatic ever seemed to happen. People came with their Bibles. They sang, prayed, and went home in peace. At the center of the church activities was the head usher, Deaconess Salome, who always stood at the entrance in white blouse, navy skirt, and her name tag pinned straight like a badge of honor. Her shoes were always polished, and her smile was measured, not careless. She did not laugh or hug people unnecessarily. She greeted with discipline. Good morning. Welcome to Living Word Assembly. If you were new, she would hand you a form. If you were late, she would direct you to the nearest empty seat. If you looked confused, she would study you before offering help. In those early years, no one thought much about the woman at the door. After all, she was just an usher, or so everyone believed. Until much later, when strange things started happening. A man in a well-ironed suit came once after service and said, "Please, I would like to see Pastor briefly." "For what purpose?" Salome asked. "I would like to discuss a partnership project." She nodded slowly as if she was weighing the entire word. Then she said, "Pastor is very busy these days. Write your number." The man wrote his number, but he never received a call, so he did not return the next Sunday, and nobody noticed because it was normal for church members to disappear quietly every day. The second strange thing happened the following week. A woman burst into church crying about her neighbor's goats entering her compound and eating her cassava. She was sweating, crying out loud and being dramatic. "Please, I must see Pastor now. This goat is a spirit." Surprisingly, Salome did not hesitate. She said, go in, he will see you immediately." That was how Pastor spent 40 minutes praying about a goat. He came out looking confused. That evening, he told his wife, "This church is full of small problems." His wife laughed and said, "It is people now." He sighed and said nothing more. The third strange thing happened during the workers' meeting. Brother Chinedu, who owned 3 supermarkets in town, stood up politely and said, "I would like to sponsor the youth conference this year." The room became quiet because that was a big offer. Then, all of a sudden, Salome smiled before anyone else could speak. "Brother Chinedu, Pastor has already finalized plans for the conference. We do not want to complicate it." The pastor looked up slightly. He did not remember finalizing anything, but he trusted Salome. If she said so, then maybe he forgot. Chinedu nodded awkwardly. "All right then." However, he stopped attending workers' meeting after that. Unfortunately, nobody connected the dots, not even on the Sunday when 2 visitors arrived at the same time. One of them drove in a shiny black SUV, while the other came on foot, wearing slippers that had seen better days. Both of them stopped at the entrance, and both of them met Salome. "Good morning," the man from the SUV said confidently. "I sent an email requesting to see the pastor about the land beside the church." Salome blinked slowly. "Which land?" "The empty plot over there. I own it, and I would like to donate it to the church." She closed her notebook gently and said, "Pastor is in prayer. He cannot see anyone today." The man frowned. "But I confirmed the appointment before coming." She tilted her head and said, "Perhaps there was a misunderstanding." The man's jaw tightened. "Tell him Mr. Adebayo came. I will inform him," she replied politely, but she did not write anything. Meanwhile, the man in slippers shuffled nervously and said loudly before anyone asked, My wife beats me this morning. I want pastor to talk to her spirits. Salome's expression softened immediately. Go inside, pastor will see you. Mr. Adebayo watched as sleepless man walked past him straight into the pastor's office. He stood there for a few seconds, shook his head and then left. That Sunday, the pastor preached about growth. He said, God is expanding us, and the church clapped. But attendance had not increased in 1 year. Offerings were steady but small, and the building fund envelope remained thin every month. Even though the church was busy, very busy, because there were always meetings about choir uniform, children's snacks, Sister Ngozi's attitude, Brother Samuel's lateness, and the color of the new curtains, the pastor was always tired. One evening, while reviewing finances, he muttered, "Why do we never move forward?" His wife adjusted her glasses and said, "Maybe we need a strategy." He nodded. Meanwhile, at that same time, Salome locked the church gate after midweek service. She checked her black notebook before placing it inside her handbag. Some names were crossed out, some names were circled, while some names remained untouched. She whispered to herself, "Order must be maintained." And then, the following Sunday, something happened that could not be ignored. Assistant Pastor Tayo arrived early, very early, earlier than Salome. He sat quietly in the front row going through his sermon notes, but from where he sat, he could hear the entrance clearly. He heard Mr. Adebayo's voice again. "Yes, I sent the documents last week." Salome's tone was firm but sweet. Pastor does not want distractions at this stage. Distractions? Tayo frowned. Moments later, he heard another voice. "Please, I need prayer. My neighbor is greeting me strangely." "Go in," Salome said. Tayo stood slowly and walked towards the entrance. He greeted her. "Good morning, Deaconess." She smiled. "Good morning, Pastor." He corrected her gently. "Assistant Pastor." But Salome nodded as if titles were minor decorations. He looked outside and saw the SUV driving away. He turned back to her and asked, "Did that man have an appointment?" She did not blink. She just said, "He came without a proper channel." Tayo looked at the black notebook in her hand and asked, "May I see the appointment list?" Her fingers tightened slightly around it immediately. "For what reason?" she asked politely. "For order," he replied with a smile, but she did not smile back. By now, the sanctuary was already filling up. The choir was testing microphones. Someone shouted, "Check 1, check 2," and children ran past them carrying biscuit wrappers like trophies. Salome adjusted her name tag and said, "The list is confidential. It contains private matters." Tayo nodded slowly. "Of course. I only want to understand how appointments are scheduled." "They are scheduled with structure," Salome replied. "We do not run a marketplace here." He smiled. "I agree, but some people are saying they've not received responses." "People say many things," Salome said. "Not every complaint is valid." Now, her tone was respectful. That was the difficult part. She never sounded rude. She never raised her voice and never crossed any obvious line. Yet, something in the air felt tight. Behind them, Sister Grace rushed forward, fanning herself. "Deaconess, please, I must see Pastor after service. My husband is now greeting me with only, I know something is wrong spiritually." Salome nodded immediately. "Write your name here." She opened the notebook just enough for her to write, and Tayo leaned slightly enough to see the page. Sharply, he noticed something odd. There were 2 columns. One was titled Urgent. The other was titled Later. Sister Grace's name entered the Urgent column without hesitation. Tayo glanced outside. The parking lot looked emptier than it should be on a Sunday. "Has Mr. Adebayo returned?" he asked casually. Salome closed the notebook smoothly and asked, "Which one?" "The man with the land beside the church," Tayo replied. "Oh!" She paused and then said, "He seems impatient." "Impatient?" Tayo asked. "Yes," Salome replied. "He wanted immediate access." Tayo frowned. I assume he had an appointment. Well, he came at an inconvenient time, Salome replied. Minutes later, Pastor Ezekiel began the opening prayer. Lord, expand our territory. Several members shouted, Amen. But Salome's lips curved slightly. Tayo watched her and said, Deaconess, how many appointment requests did we receive this month? Many, she replied. How many were honored? He asked. All that were necessary, she replied again. Necessary? That word stayed in his mind. After service, the line formed as usual. Members waited to greet Pastor. Some brought small offerings in envelopes, while others wanted quick prayer. Salome stood slightly to the side, directing the traffic like a calm police officer. You can greet him quickly. Please step aside. Write your issue briefly. When Mr. Bassi, a man who owned a construction company, approached her, she lowered her voice and said, Pastor is exhausted today. Come back later. I will be quick, the man said respectfully. It is about sponsoring the new roof. Well, her expression did not change. She said, the roofing committee has already decided. The man frowned. Last I remember, there is no roofing committee. Salome held his gaze and said, there is now. The man nodded slowly. Tayo, who had been observing them from a distance, walked closer and said, Brother Bassi, please wait. Pastor will see you now. Salome turned slightly and said, Assistant Pastor, we must protect Pastor from overload. Tayo responded calmly, we must also protect the vision from delay. The two sentences hung between them like invisible ropes. After 30 minutes, Pastor finished praying for Sister Grace, who left satisfied that her husband's has been rebuked successfully. When Tayo approached the pastor privately, he asked, Sir, how are appointments managed? The pastor replied, through Salome, she has always handled access. Do you review the list? He asked. The pastor looked confused. Is there a list? Tayo did not answer immediately. That evening, he visited the church office and requested the visitor log from the secretary. The log showed 12 appointment requests from business owners in the past 2 months, but only 3 were recorded as seen. The rest were marked postponed. Postponed to when? Nobody knows because there was no date beside the word. And then the following Wednesday, something happened again that could not be brushed aside. A letter arrived by courier. It was addressed directly to Pastor Ezekiel. Salome received it at the door before service. She read the sender's name and, when she saw Mr. Adebayo, she slipped the envelope inside her handbag. Tayo watched her from afar, but he did not confront her, not yet. Instead, he approached her and asked her casually, Is there any new correspondence today? She smiled again, perfectly and calmly. Only routine mail. May I help sort it? Tayo offered, but Salome smiled wider. That will not be necessary. Her tone remained sweet, but her grip on her handbag tightened harder. Ironically, inside the sanctuary, the choir began singing about open doors, but outside, one door was quietly being guarded by a gatekeeper. Tayo looked at her carefully and began to understand that the problem was about filtering. She was doing this selection in a very organized way, which made her far more dangerous. That evening, he sent a polite message to Mr. Adebayo requesting a meeting outside the church premises. If there was something wrong, then he needed proof because suspicion without evidence was gossip. Meanwhile, at the entrance of Living Word Assembly, Salome locked the gate and stood still for a moment, staring at the empty road. Inside her handbag, the unopened envelope from Mr. Adebayo pressed against the leather. She adjusted the strap on her shoulder and walked to her car. Order must be maintained, she told herself. Across town, Assistant Pastor Tayo sat in a small cafe with Mr. Adebayo the following evening. Mr. Adebayo said, I was told Pastor was not interested, so I withdrew. Interested in what exactly? Tayo asked. In donating the land beside your building. I thought it would solve your parking problem and expansion plans. Tayo's face remained plain, but something tightened in his chest. Did you speak to Pastor directly? No, I spoke to the lady at the entrance. She said the church did not want to grow too quickly. Tayo almost smiled at the irony. Not want to grow too quickly, but Living Word Assembly had been praying for growth every Sunday for 3 years. Did you send an email? Yes, Mr. Adebayo nodded. And I also sent a letter this week. Tayo nodded slowly. That letter. By the time Tayo returned home that night, he was convinced beyond doubt that this was no longer a misunderstanding. It was a clear pattern. The next Sunday, he arrived earlier than usual again. But this time, he did not sit quietly. He stood beside the secretary in the small office near the entrance to observe. Inside the sanctuary, Salome moved gracefully between rows, adjusting chairs, correcting seating, and whispering instructions to junior ushers. Make sure that man sits at the back. Do not allow those two to wait near pastor. After service, direct all urgent matters to me. Everything sounded reasonable, very reasonable. And then, after service, Tayo did something unexpected. He stood beside Pastor during greetings. When a visitor approached Salome first, he stepped forward and intercepted. "Good afternoon, I am Assistant Pastor Tayo. How can we help you?" Salome's smile froze for half a second. The visitor, a middle-aged woman in corporate attire, spoke quickly. "I run a foundation for widows. I wanted to discuss partnership." Salome opened her mouth, but Tayo spoke first. "Please wait, Pastor will see you briefly." Pastor looked surprised but nodded politely. The meeting lasted for 7 minutes, and when the woman left, Pastor turned to Tayo and said, "She seems serious." "She is," Tayo replied. Salome remained silent. Later that afternoon, she walked into the administrative office calmly and said, "Assistant Pastor, may I speak with you?" "Of course." They sat opposite each other and she began, "You are disrupting structure." Tayo corrected, "I am reviewing structure." She folded her hands neatly on the table and said, "Not every person who brings money brings purity, and not every poor complaint brings progress," Tayo answered. Her eyes sharpened slightly. She warned him, "You are young, Assistant Pastor. You do not understand the history of this church." "Then help me understand," he said. Silence stretched between them for 1 long minute, and then she said, "Growth changes things. New people come with influence, and influence shifts loyalty." Tayo leaned forward. "Is loyalty to the church threatened by growth?" "It can be," Salome replied. "People forget those who build quietly." Tayo nodded slowly. I see." That evening, Pastor called for a small leadership review meeting, basically to review numbers, because he noticed that the visitor count had dropped by 15% and offering remained flat. Pastor rubbed his forehead and said slowly, "We are working harder, but why are we not moving forward?" Tayo placed the visitor log on the table. "Sir, may I ask who filters appointment requests?" Pastor looked towards the door instinctively. "Salome has always done that." "And do you review them personally, if I may ask?" Pastor hesitated. "No, I trust her." "Trust? Okay." Meanwhile, Salome sat alone in her car in the dark parking lot. Her phone vibrated and a message from an unknown number came in. It was a photo. The photo showed Tayo sitting with Mr. Adebayo in the cafe. She stared at it for a long moment. So he had gone around her. Her jaw tightened. If he wanted to play strategy, then she would respond with even more better strategy. The next Sunday, chaos arrived disguised as coincidence. 3 major visitors came at the same time. They were all professionals and serious. Most importantly, they were all directed by Tayo personally. Salome maintained her smile, but this time, instead of blocking them openly, she changed the schedule. She informed Pastor that urgent family matters required extended counseling sessions. So, she filled the morning with with small crises like a disagreement over choir uniform, a youth complaint about sitting, and a woman who believed her neighbor had cursed her plantain tree. By the time the professionals waited for 2 hours, Pastor was visibly exhausted. One of them left. Another one checked his watch repeatedly while the third remained patient. Tayo watched everything and understood what happened immediately. This woman at the door was managing the church into smallness. When service ended, Tayo approached Pastor privately. "Sir, I believe we need a transparent appointment system." Pastor looked troubled. "Are you saying Salome is?" "I am saying we need clarity," Tayo replied carefully. Pastor nodded slowly. That evening, Salome returned home and placed the black notebook on her table. Her sitting room was neat, too neat. The curtains were drawn properly. The television remote lay exactly where it was supposed to be. The room was evidence of the fact that the owner liked control. For the first time in years, she felt something she did not like. Pressure. She was losing control and it did not look good at all. She removed her shoes slowly and sat down. The black notebook stared back at her. For years, it had been simple. She had written down names, notes, decisions, and order. But now, it felt threatened. Her phone vibrated and a message came in from the church administrative group. "There will be leadership retreat this Saturday. All department heads must attend." Department heads? She read it twice, "must attend," and she hoped it was not what she suspected it was. When Saturday arrived, plastic chairs were arranged in a circle in the church hall. Pastor looked serious in a different way. Assistant Pastor Tayo sat beside him with a laptop, and Salome walked in with her usual calm posture, dressed in a white blouse, navy skirt, and a black notebook in her hand. She greeted everyone as if nothing had changed. The meeting began with prayer. Then Pastor cleared his throat and said, "We have been praying for growth, but our physical numbers show stagnation." He looked at Tayo. Tayo stood and turned on the projector screen, which showed simple charts of attendance, visitor return rates, appointment requests, and follow-up records. It was strange because nobody expected charts at a church retreat. Tayo explained, over the last 6 months, 27 professional visitors requested meetings. 9 were seen, while 18 were postponed without new dates. Salome did not blink. Tayo continued, several donation offers were not communicated to leadership. The pastor looked confused. Not communicated? Just then, a thick voice came from the back. It was Brother Bassi, the contractor. "I offered roofing sponsorship, but I was told plans had been finalized." The pastor's eyebrows lifted. "We never finalized any roofing." There was silence, and then slowly, all eyes moved towards Salome. Yet, she remained composed and said, "I filtered requests because not every offer is healthy." Tayo nodded slightly. "On what criteria, please?" She looked at him directly and said, "Discernment." A few leaders shifted uncomfortably. Pastor leaned forward and asked, "Salome, why was Mr. Adebayo told we did not want his land?" Her voice remained official. She answered, "Because rapid expansion attracts politics, and remaining small attracts what?" Tayo asked. She turned to him sharply. "Loyalty." Pastor frowned. "Are you saying we should avoid growth?" "I am saying that growth changes power," Salome replied carefully. The room went still. Nobody had said the word power before like that. Pastor removed his glasses slowly and asked, "Salome, do you believe new people would replace you?" Her jaw tightened and she spoke carelessly now. "I built this ministry when there were no microphones. I typed your sermons when there was no office. I carried chairs when there were no ushers. Then when growth came, new committees were formed, new voices emerged, and suddenly I was told to focus on the door." Her voice did not even shake. That made it more painful. "I I did not stop the church, she continued. I only protected its history. Tayo asked, by limiting its future? The words landed heavily. She pointed at him. You are young. You came into an organized system. He did not argue. He simply nodded. I came into a system that filters opportunity. The pastor closed his eyes briefly. Salome, you should have spoken to me. I did years ago, she said. The pastor looked confused. But you did not listen, she continued. The room absorbed that sentence slowly. After a long pause, the pastor spoke again. We failed to define structure clearly. That is my responsibility. Then he added something heavier. But filtering appointments without transparency is not protection. It is selfish control. The board members nodded quietly and a decision was made, effective immediately. All appointment requests would be logged digitally and a two-person approval system would be implemented. No single department head would filter access alone. Donation offers must now be presented to the full board. Salome listened without interruption. Then the pastor looked at her directly and said, you will step down as chief usher for now. You will join community outreach. Your service is not forgotten, but the door will no longer be yours alone. The sentence was gentle, but it carried heavy consequences. For years, she had controlled who passed through that entrance, but now she would stand inside with everyone else. The next Sunday felt different. A new usher stood at the entrance, smiling too widely and greeting too loudly. Salome arrived 5 minutes before service with no black book in hand, just her Bible. She walked around the entrance out of habit, but the new usher blocked her politely. Good morning, ma. Please take a seat. For the first time in many years, she was directed. She nodded and walked inside. From her seat, she watched Mr. Adebayo walk through the door without resistance. He shook hands with Pastor directly. Something tightened in her chest. Was this betrayal or was it correction? During the service, the pastor preached about stewardship. He said, sometimes we guard what we helped build so tightly that we stop it from breathing. Nobody looked at her, but everybody understood the assignments. After service, people moved freely now. There were no long queues, silent blocking or abnormal redirection. Salome remained seated longer than usual. Her hands rested on her Bible as she turned to glance at the entrance, whose door remained open. The door that no longer belonged to her. The door that now belonged to the church. Now, she was forced to ask herself a harder question. How would she feel if she was locked out of this door by the new gatekeeper? Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. What lesson did you learn from the story? Kindly share the story out with your loved ones and give the story a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!